Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we getting on? Welcome to a brand new camp build. So this week we've got a couple of items from the Pitt that have been added to the atomic shop. So I thought, as the lighting is somewhat similar, let's head down to the Ash Heap and put them to good use. Okay, so yeah, we've got a few bits and pieces from the Pitt, or sort of Pitt-themed things that have been added to the atomic shop this week. We've got front and centre this Pitt scaffold set, which is sort of around a lot of the fanatic spots that we've got in the front here, and a few other bits as well. And with the lighting in the Ash Heap being as close as we get in Appalachia to the Pitt, I thought, why not head down here? So you can see where we are there, just above this train track here. We're actually starting to come up the side of Mt Blair a little bit here, just sort of on the knees of the mountain. There's the train yard and the Red Rocket just down at the bottom there. And Rollins Labour Camp. This sort of bottom half of the Ash Heap's got a few good spots in it. Quite like building down here. So yeah, somewhere I've not built before, but not far from other places that I have. So, little small, but it's quite cool, this spot. So here we go. You can see the sort of the hill, Mt Blair, kind of steps up as it goes up the hill there. So we're kind of on a ridge here. Going to start off with the shipping container. This blue one came in the last season, but there's a yellow one that popped up in the atomic shop a while back as well. And we're going to start off by putting a door on here. I do wish these had doors that snapped on, and a version of them with an entrance on the side rather than on the front, sort of cut into the side, but it is what it is. So we're going to line up this foundation with the entrance here, and it just fits inside of the posts on the side there, so that works quite well. We'll shunt that out the way for a minute. And now we're going to set ourselves up to lower this down. Now I want steps and a doorway on here, so we're going to have to kind of carefully position these. We'll need to pop this up just a little bit so that we can put the stairs on there and have them the right height. I've actually gone a tiny little bit too high here, but I didn't find out until way later, so it is what it is. But we'll drop that back down again now. Now I want the doorway in place. Pro tip, this is where you want to put the door in the frame if you want to have one on here, because you won't be able to do it later. But with that in there, we can now take the foundation off, as long as it's a doorway, and just carefully maneuver this shipping container back up against the doorway and close off that front edge. I've gone with the wooden one here because it looks kind of improvised, and that kind of suits the vibe better, as there's nothing that matches. So if we've got to improvise, let's lean into it. So I'm going to build a structure that kind of wraps around the side and over the top of the shipping container here. So we're going to carefully line up this foundation with the edge here. Fits kind of nicely between the vertical posts there. Not quite as far in as I would like, but it just about works. So with that in place, we'll just make sure we've got the line as accurate as I can. So stairs on there, we'll grab an upper floor, snap that on, and we can sort of see here just about, it's kind of hard to see in the video admittedly, but it's not quite straight here. The upper floor there is just a little bit angled across the top edge of that shipping container, and I want it as straight as I can get. So we're going to adjust that a little bit. Have to move this a bit further out and then move it back in, otherwise it'll just jump back to where it was, helpfully. But there we go. So that should be about right now. Bit of trial and error. I don't think we're going to get it much straighter than that. Unfortunately, coming from the side, we can't reach quite as far over as I would like. You kind of can if you start at the end, but I want it to be on the side here, so we'll manage with that. It's fine. It kind of works with what will be a very ramshackle structure, which is the idea. So let's get these extra foundations in down here. We'll start putting this structure together properly. So I'm going to get a staircase in there. So we've got plenty of room inside this lower area. And we're going to touch the floor on at the top here. I'm just going to have this one floor extending over the top. There we go. So we'll pick up the pace a little bit now. So as we're going to put the walls in. And we're going to do an old favourite of mine and mix and match as many different pieces as we can. Just to make this look like it's stuff that's been found and dragged back. And they've built it out of whatever they can possibly find. So, dead simple to do, but lots of fiddly bits, so we'll speed along a little bit. So YouTube's playback controls will slow that down for you if you do want to see it a bit slower. Yeah, we're kind of mixing and matching things, trying to make sure that as much as possible I haven't got two textures that are the same next to each other. Another key thing I tend to do is if I'm using something like brick or concrete, you know, the Brotherhood set there, I put something like that at the bottom and something more wooden on the top, because the idea of having a big concrete slab, like that Brotherhood piece in the corner there, for example, on top of a piece of 2x4 doesn't really make a whole lot of sense in my head, so doesn't really matter, but generally that's the way I go. There's actually one exception that you might spot later on that. we'll head upstairs now. I want one floor here at the side, and I'm going to put a roof over that section there, because I want to have this as many different heights and shapes as I can. Looks like, you know, they weren't able to find enough to go nice and even, so the whole thing's really kind of oddly shaped, which makes it more interesting to look at and a bit more organic looking. Okay, so let's get these last couple of walls in place. And we'll put some roofs in. So going for these angled corner pieces here. Again, they kind of cut the corners of the building, make for a bit more of an interesting shape. A couple more half walls in there. Again, I'm just going to mix things up. Down top there. Oop, falling off. Don't use those metal walls very often, but the half walls work quite well for these scrappy things to mix things up a little bit. And we'll get a glass window up here just because. So, need to get a doorway in here and on the other side as well. So, there's a wooden one over there. Trying to make sure that we haven't got matching doors facing the same way any more than really necessary. There's one exception on there, but not a big deal. So with that in there, we'll close up the last few holes. Now, there's a couple of roofs on. Just single square roofs on the top there. As we've got single foundation pieces to cover. Close up these last couple of gaps. And we've got a little balcony area out here at the back, and I'm just going to extend that out a little bit, just to make sure that it's, you know, again, a bit more interesting, a bit of an odd shape, and it'll give me somewhere to kind of cover the back from if I do get attacked from that direction. I'm also going to do the usual putting posts underneath to support it and making sure they're on the corners as much as possible, but I kind of skipped over that because we've done it a lot of times recently, and this video is reasonably long, so I thought we'd step right along. But for the last thing on this main structure, I want to kind of foundation up front here, a little bit lower than the rest of the floors, just to kind of create a nice entranceway, make it a bit more interesting. It actually will come on from the side there, not the front, but I'll make my mind up on that bit later. So there's the structure, a couple of little changes still to be made, I can sort of see there, and I need to decorate, but out front here, I want to build a kind of courtyard area that's walled off and make use of those scaffold set from the pit that was in the atomic shop. It's the whole starting point for this build, actually. Mostly, this is just going to be a standard junk wall around here. I did initially try and use these pit scaffolds all the way around. They're kind of mixed, to my mind, in the way they look. They're quite cool. They will sit up quite high if you want them to. They don't snap to foundations or upper floors, unfortunately, but they are designed to be connected directly to the ground and sort of be used as junk walls and guards and guard posts and stuff like that, which is what we're going to do here. As I say, I was going to run them all the way around, as there is a straight piece as opposed to these corner ones we're using, but it was a bit overbearing, I think partly because of where I'm building. This sort of little shoulder of ground here on the mountain is really quite thin. It's not a big area, so with it being quite small, these really large objects are a bit overbearing. So I went for a couple of the corner pieces on each side to form basically most of the front wall, with a couple of guard posts made out of them. So that kind of stops it being too over the top. So we've kind of got those in. I've had to make some adjustments, obviously, because they were a little bit low down. I just didn't want to snap. They're a bit finicky with that sometimes, but again, I think that's probably just the ground where I happen to be building is preventing them from snapping properly and feeling like they're supported properly and that sort of thing. So I'm going to carefully maneuver this encampment gate in. The straight piece of this scaffold set is actually the same width as one foundation, one gate like that. So you can just put one in, then take it out afterwards to make sure things are the right size, but because of the way I'm doing things, it didn't quite work out that way. After the two corner pieces, it wouldn't snap onto the edges of, so what can you do? So we've got that in, got these guard posts effectively in on either side, made out of the corner pieces of the scaffold there, and we're just going to extend our junk wall along this side until it meets up with the edge of the building. So jumping back onto the scaffolds again, we have a ramp that comes with this set that allows us to get up there. Unfortunately, stairs I don't think snap onto these, but we've got the ramp, that does just fine. It's a little bit finicky. You can place it manually, but it'll only sink down so far. which is nowhere near as far as you might need it to for other uses, which is a bit unfortunate. But it does mean you can kind of manually place things in if it's being a bit awkward. Although in this case, it didn't quite meet up properly. Again, it wouldn't sink far enough in, so I had to come over here and just bump this one up just a little bit manually, which they're a bit awkward about. They wanted to jump around and slide around a bit, these things, so it was a little unfortunate, but kind of a little patience and careful positioning was able to get that back where I wanted it, and now we can snap that ramp on just fine. So we'll pop that one up to meet it. And yeah, they're different heights, but I can live with that. It would be nice if we had a way of closing these corner pieces off that actually fit, but unfortunately most things are either too big or too small. But for this gap, just sort of carefully placing in a chain link fence, blends in with everything else that's on there. And once we've dressed everything else up, it'll be sort of concealed and out of sight, so it won't stick out too much. So with that, let's have a look at the tour. Okay. So there we go. Got the rustic barricades there from the pit, looking pretty decent out front. They've got kind of an imposing, secure-looking front aspect, I think. It looks pretty cool. I do like those things. Bit awkward to work with, as I say, but I do like the effect. Dress them up a little bit there. Got a few posters and a few signs and guard posts and like out front. Just give it a bit more depth, a bit more texture, and make the whole thing look a bit more organic. If you look at the sort of top left, top right corners, you can see what they look like without the extra bits I've added. But I do think it looks quite nice with a little bit extra on there. Kind of blends the pit and Appalachia a little bit more smoothly, I think, that way. In its ramshackle sort of way. A couple of punji boards, because the front gate's not locked. Do want people to be able to get into my vendors after all. We'll have a little look around this courtyard. Well, as per, gone to town on the decoration. There's actually about a quarter of the budget left on this, so it's reasonably compact, this camp, so I'm quite happy with that. Pleased with the effect. A few bits and pieces out front here that I would have liked, ostensibly, to have in my crafting room, but I've used the shipping container here for that, and there's only so much space inside, so needs must and all that. But it came up quite nicely. See the curtains I've got out front there, kind of add a nice finish to the entranceway, given that, as I said before, I forgot to put the door on at the start, as I don't do that very often in this particular technique, and once you've removed that foundation, you can't put the door on afterwards. I do quite like the look in here, though. I've used some neon lights in here, along with the icicle lights as well, to give it a bit of a blue cast, to go with the already blue shipping container, and it creates quite a distinctive vibe, I think. Most of the usual culprits in here. Did tuck that radiation glove box in the corner, though. That's a recent addition from the current season, so I thought, why not? I think it's a bit, well, maybe a little bit out of place, but it is quite cool, this thing, so nice little decoration item to have. Really compact and cozy in here. Got plenty of bits and pieces in. There's a few gaps I would have liked to have filled a little more, but pathing is about as narrow as I can get it without being able to, without running into problems, that sort of thing, so it is what it is, but I do quite like the effect overall. Plenty going on. Let's head back out the doorway and have a little look around the rest of this courtyard. Yeah, do quite like the effect of the junk walls combined with the pit scaffolds, but as I said before, they're quite overbearing if you have a small-ish area like this with such large structures surrounding it. So if that's the vibe you're going for, you can work with that, but in this case, it didn't feel quite right, so using those guard posts out here has worked quite nicely. We've got a few boxes out there to store ammo in, and somewhere for the guards to take a load off while defending the place. My entirely fictional headcanon guards, but nonetheless. Gives you a nice place to cover that entrance from if we do get any trouble. As you see, put a little kind of structure over here for my market, my vendors, and it's dead simple, just one foundation, half wall at the back, and then a slanted roof on the top of it, and then dress it all up, and it's come together quite nicely. It's a simple little thing to do. If you've got the space for it, it makes a nice kind of focal point for your vendors, which works quite well, I think. I've done it a couple of times before in a couple of variations, but it looks quite nice, I think. I like doing that. Same thing as with the other guard post on this side. More or less, used a couple of different bits and pieces for it, but principle is pretty similar. They're quite big spaces when you put two of these corner pieces together, so dressing them up in an appropriate way is not as easy as it might appear. I mean, there's no lack of space, but making it look busy is harder. So as we head on towards the entrance, you can see a couple of barrels at the back here, and you might spot a few more knocking around. These are new ones from the pits. These ones are in the atomic shop. They're a little different, I think, to the ones on the scoreboard at the moment. There's 2 sets there. One thing that is worth noting with them is you might want to use the merge glitch if you're going to put anything on the top, because the collision box of those barrels is just a little bit too high on the top, so things look like they're floating. So one little click drops that down and it looks much more believable. Quite like my little living space in here. I kind of wanted to go with something that felt almost barracks-like. Ended up with something that was a bit more homely than a barracks. Considerably more homely, more like a small studio flat, really. But getting that right vibe, the kind of scrappy vibe I wanted in the internal area was challenging. But I think it's quite okay. It's comfortable enough and improvised looking enough. So out the back here, you can sort of see this area follows the shape of the back of the structure, and then I've just junk walled it off. Give me somewhere to put that power armor station and dressed it up, as you can imagine. Yeah, dead simple. This sort of back corridor, I suppose, just has the same thickness of that 1/2 floor piece up top, and it kind of follows the lines nicely. Well, it also kind of preserves the shape of the building as well, which I quite like. So quite pleased with that. Decided not to put a TV down here, partly because I've got one upstairs, as we'll see in a bit, and partly just kind of improv vibe, but I didn't want the thing to look too much like a completed home. I wanted to keep that very scrappy vibe going. Let's take our way upstairs. By the way, only one wall on the bottom floor there, because the post on the shipping container actually gets in the way of the second one, so it wouldn't snap in, but again, keeps that scrappy vibe, so I'm quite happy with that. Get a little look here at the landing. Quite pleased with how this has come out. This little balcony here looks, yeah, pretty nice, I think. As I say earlier, the idea was basically to give me somewhere to fire from, if only to cover this back approach here, as you sort of see the path kind of wraps up the hillside there. It also gives a nice little seating area as well, and changes up the shape of the structure quite well, so pleased with that too. Use the flamethrower to destroy that table, as getting any chairs close enough to look sensible and that thing's a bit of a nightmare. I think the collision box extends from the top of the umbrella rather than from the edge of the table, which is a bit unfortunate. But that did allow me to tuck things a little bit more closely together. The lack of HUD is catching me out here. I'm getting myself stuck outside the building. Get that door open again eventually. There we go. So with the stairs here, using these sort of mesh ones, I often like to use chain link fence to kind of wrap around the top of the stairs, as we don't have any railings to put there. But the roof's a bit too low for that in this one, so I went for the barbed wire, as you can see, which is probably a little awkward when you live in the place, but it does look alright, so I quite like that effect. That's the little bedroom area there, fairly standard, tucked into our little space up here, but do like the look of it. And out here, I wanted this sort of sitting area to be a little more understated. I would have liked to have had shorter railings on this, just because to kind of keep the different height levels between the top of the building and the top of the shipping container here a bit more obvious. But unfortunately, the only option for lower ones don't really fit, so, or it's the version that needs to be snapped into place, and that doesn't work either, obviously, on there. But I did quite like the look anyway. Put the quest posters on the wall up here just to kind of break up what was quite a smooth surface with that particular wooden texture, but I didn't want any of the sort of cleaner wooden textures. I wanted something a little bit more rough looking, so quite happy with how that came out. Yeah, I feel like this has got quite the improvised vibe for a living space, but that was a bit of a challenge to kind of get that looking quite the way I wanted it. I'm about 80% happy with that. I do like the way this little area around the punch card machines come out there. That looks quite nice. Got my Collectron tucked in the corner, because you gotta. I need that sweet Nuka-Cola. Reasonably open out here. I was debating putting something in the middle of the space, but it's not very level, so I decided against in the end. And yeah, I do quite like how this has come out. Nice little ramshackle kind of fort vibe. Which, yeah, pretty pleased with. So, I hope you folks did enjoy that one. If you did, please do consider dropping subs and likes. I very, very much appreciate it. Down below the video, you can find social media links, merch store, channel memberships, all that good stuff. If you're interested in supporting the channel in that way, I really, really appreciate that. It really helps out. So, massive thank you to everyone who's done that already. Please do check it out. And if you get a chance, do check out the live streams as well. We are, of course, playing Fallout 76, checking out the Pit and the new content, as well as we're finishing off Dead Space 2 at the minute, which has been a lot of fun. So new stuff coming up as well. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to speaking to you all very, very soon.